I definitely consider myself a tech enthusiast, and I would say when it comes to technology, especially on YouTube and getting into YouTube, there's the tech community world and then there's the everyday consumer world, which is what Apple mainly goes for. They don't go for tech reviewers, they go for the everyday consumers. And nothing proves that to be true more than something like the iPhone 13 Pro, because that really put into perspective on how I wanted to go about this review. And in this review, I'm not going to get too nerdy, show you Geekbench and all this and that, and try to be too nerdy about it. I just want to simply explain why this is the best phone I've ever used and probably will be even with the iPhones of next year. I mean, I don't even know if it will be worthwhile to upgrade next year with how good this iPhone is. It would have to be a pretty dramatic difference from this one in order for me to justify that upgrade if I wasn't doing tech reviews or anything. So hopefully that intro kind of set the stage for how I'm going about this today. This is Adam, what's happening? And I hope you're doing well. Let's just get straight into the review. Now, in starting out with this review, I want to talk about the new design real quick. So a 20% smaller notch, the stainless steel bands, the Sierra Blue color, which is the best colorway they've come out with in a long time, in my opinion. Even though my favorite color is red, I still like these more neutral colors where it's a matte, not so out there kind of color where it kind of throws off your outfit, if you know what I mean. And obviously the massive camera bumps. Overall, what do I think about it? I feel like since this is the first Pro design from Apple I've gotten, especially with the stainless steel bands, etc., it's a little much. It makes me feel like I can't rough this phone up, or it just feels too weird without a case. And I usually put a case on my phones anyway, but now I really want to put a case on this thing because it feels so fragile and durable at the same time. But the fingerprint situation is really annoying in my opinion. I'm just kind of a neat freak with my stuff. And with the camera bump, the biggest flaw about that is I can't attach a case and stick it to my refrigerator when I'm listening to content or something metal. Because of MagSafe, I did that all the time. And you may think I'm joking, but I'm serious. I can't do that anymore. The camera bumps stick out way too much. So overall, I mean, it's nice aesthetically, but Apple right away has to be the feed y'all raven of being like, okay, this for sure is an iPhone. It's like, Apple, we get it. Like, it's an iPhone. But I feel like they try a little too hard with that. Instead of utility and functionality of the phone, they always got to try to be different. But either way, it's a nice looking phone, but it's not my favorite thing in the world. And I probably went a little too hard on Apple over that, but it's just how I feel. I like the matte finish better and how a phone feels in the hand. And when it comes to the notch, they say 20% smaller, but it feels 20% the same. And that's a joke and play on words that I like to use, but because I feel like they went 20% smaller horizontally, but it just went vertically 20%. Because how I noticed that is with playing games and watching video on this phone versus the 12 mini even, the 12 mini didn't cut into games like Call of Duty or Lumosity or whatever I was using, even Duolingo, as much as it did here in the beginning. So that told me, and it's fine now, the apps have developed and updated to adjust to that notch, but I'm like, why would they have to adjust in that way if the notch really was 20% smaller? So for me, I feel like it's pretty much the same. The only thing that's different is the earpiece and the sensors got squished together a little bit more. But other than that, it's not really a big difference. So I don't think it's good or bad. I just think it's 20% the same. And so with that explanation of the notch, or probably dumb explanation of it, let's be real, comes talking about the display of this new iPhone. Now it has 1000 nits max peak brightness, unless you're using HDR, that's 1200 nits max peak brightness. But what I love about this iPhone and iPhones in general, but especially this one, is not only how bright it gets outside, because I do a lot of gardening and I'm outside quite a bit, even on walks, is how dim it gets. So in using it in the garden, and not literally in the garden, but outside when working on my garden, even with polarized sunglasses, had no issue seeing the screen at all. I mean, it almost gets a little too bright sometimes, especially indoors, but no issues on that. One thing that doesn't get said often is how dim iPhones get. Let's compare it to the OnePlus 9, for example. The OnePlus 9, even at night, when I'm literally in bed still using my phone, having the dim level all the way down, the brightness level all the way down, it still felt too bright. With an iPhone, I feel like these are the only phones, especially now with the 13 Pro, that cause the least amount of eye strain when using it before bed. Now, yes, you have night shift and this and that, but I think that's vitally important to take care of the health of your eyes. Now, The thing is, I already know what some people are thinking is you probably shouldn't be using your phone in bed anyway. But that's a hard habit to get out of, especially me. I'm always checking on things, watching a video before bed, and sometimes literally in bed using my phone. So that's one thing that probably goes underappreciated about iPhones is not only how bright it gets, but also how dim the screen gets. And since we're talking about displays, yes, Apple finally gave the 13 Pro a promotion with ProMotion. And okay, I thought it was funny. But anyhow, how does this actually apply to my everyday life with what I've noticed? And it's not to compare the fact that Android phones may have had this first or anything like that. I go, what does it matter to have 120 hertz with the refresh rate on an iPhone or smartphone, period? Well, the biggest factor and why I love it and won't be able to go back, and I'm so glad they finally have this now, is fluidity and being able to multitask and being able to operate quicker with your phone. It doesn't matter if it's copying and pasting things or if it's scrolling through a web page or switching between apps even. A lot of people bring up frame rates in video and in video games especially, but it doesn't really matter with most video. If we say YouTube is the biggest, content consumption platform in the world, then it's like, okay, most of those videos have a 30 frame rate, 24 frame rate video quality, or maybe even 60. So it's not even going to keep up with 120 hertz. You're not going to notice any difference with that. It can't match it. So for me, it's all about fluidity and multitasking and how you use your phone more than anything else. Finally, you can keep up with how fast you want to get through things as opposed to just how fast frame rates are in a video game or in a video, period. Now, because the iPhone 13 Pro models are not locked at 120 hertz, you can go into your settings and lock it at 60 hertz if you want, to where it's just 60 hertz across the board. But it has 12 different variable refresh rates from 10 to 120, depending on what you're doing, really to compensate for battery life and performance of the phone altogether. So for me personally, I hope they bring 120 hertz as the refresh rate to with this variable to even the lower tier models, because I think it just benefits the consumer base altogether. And you don't have to be a tech nerd to notice this. I mean, I'm telling you, once you go to 120 hertz, you're gonna be like, wow, I just use my phone so much faster. It's just more pleasing to the eye, but also in functionality. So hopefully they bring it to every phone across the board next year. But if you're thinking that makes a big difference, in my opinion, it definitely does. Now, what I want to move into next, before talking about the cameras, is going over to battery life real quick. And the best way to do is show you charts of my real world usage of on screen time. So anywhere from almost 5.5 hours to over 7 hours of on screen time. Now, that's all kinds of different factors come into play, but I never changed the refresh rate. So it's always 120 hertz, that variable refresh rate. Screen being full brightness if I was in the garden or dim if I was going to bed. Using the camera and video extensively and uploading videos on YouTube, whether it was shorts or making a community post, and editing videos on Kapwing as well, whatever I was doing. So all those factors into play, I'm really highly impressed with the battery life and battery quality. Now the phone weighs 7.19 ounces, so it's heavier than last year's models, of course, and probably is mainly because of the battery life. So I think they did a really good job on that. All right, so far so good with the iPhone 13 Pro, besides some minor complaints I had aesthetically about it in the beginning with the design. But one thing I'm absolutely not disappointed in is the new hardware and new camera system of the iPhone 13 Pro. So without getting too nerdy, the Pro camera system with the telephoto, the wide, and the ultra wide are all 12 megapixels, including the front facing camera. Now the front facing camera has an aperture of 2.2, but the telephoto is 2.8, the wide is 1.5, and the ultra wide is 1.8. Now I could probably make a whole separate video just talking about the cameras alone, but in this review I think best thing to do is just show you video examples and also plenty of photo examples of how well the cameras perform. So silence is golden. I won't talk over this section of it. Here are some example photos and video. I hope you enjoy. Now, with all those photo and video examples, I will say I'll probably have to make a whole new video just on the camera system alone. But my favorite things are obviously the new macro mode, the cinematic mode, and the photographic styles, because this really changes the game for content creators mostly. People who do a lot of Instagram lives or TikToks, or maybe their phone is their camera. Like that's literally what they have to take photography for real, and they're just starting out. So again, probably have to make a whole new video just on the photography side of things. But I will say one thing that I know Apple will eventually come out with a software update on is the macro mode on video, and then also just when it comes to taking stills is when you zoom in really close on a subject. I do not like how it does it automatically for you. I'd rather manually do that because it really glitches out right now, especially if you're trying to take a macro photo of, let's say, a plant or some flowers or something, things that are moving a little bit. It doesn't know what to focus on. So I remember using the OnePlus 9 to bring that phone up again with macro mode, and it really stayed focused on whatever you're pointing it at instead of trying to determine that. Besides that, the camera systems I don't have a disappointment in. I think they did really well. I mean, I can't praise it enough. Now, this sounds so funny how I'm going to put this, but the next thing I want to talk about is the speaker quality and the microphone quality of these new iPhones, namely because of, yes, call quality on a phone. So for me, with taking calls in a loud coffee shop or really just using this as an actual phone. All right, and here's a voice example of what it would sound like taking a phone call in a really loud coffee shop. Test 1 2 3, test 1 2 3. I'm dang impressed with the speaker quality overall, not just for content consumption and playing things really loud like music or whatever, but I often use my phone in the kitchen and also use it in the bathroom when I'm taking a shower, just setting it there on the counter and letting it play. And it's the least piercing in sound quality, especially for those that have bad microphones with their video quality. If I'm watching like a YouTube video or something, if they're not using fancy podcast mics, it's really tuned. I mean, there's good bass in these new phones. It's not piercing again when it comes to the highs, and the mids are definitely there. So overall content consumption, definitely the best I've heard for sure in an iPhone, not just because it's new, but they finally updated that to where it's tuned to where it gets really loud, but nothing is out of balance. And again, with call quality, I just noticed it sounds way better even on the other end when it comes to making phone calls and things like that. And using the voice recorder, if basically another way I can put this is if you want to start a podcast and you're worried about getting a fancy microphone, and let's say the iPhone 13 Pro is all you have, I think you could even record music with this thing. Whether you're recording the music literally, or you're a rapper, a singer, or you're recording a podcast with a voice recorder, I think the microphones on here are good enough for that. So that's kind of what I mean by microphone performance and the speaker quality performance. So last thing I'll mention is the A15 Bionic chip, and it's so good and so buttery smooth that smartphones have come such a long way in performance to where I didn't notice any lag. There's no processing power issues, whether it's uploading videos, watching content, taking photos, whatever I was doing with this phone, no issues at all. Simplest way I can explain it without getting nerdy on all the specs of what they have to offer with the A15 Bionic chip. But with that goes into this phone is best for content creators and is the ultimate content creating device, in my opinion, hands down. Whether you're doing a podcast or recording music, you sing or you rap, I mean, all you need is an iPhone nowadays, especially this iPhone 13 Pro. It's so good with that. Or if you're taking photographic stills for Instagram or doing vlogging videos on TikTok, whatever it is you're doing, this phone, even if you want to be a YouTuber and you're like, hey, I'm considering getting the iPhone 13 Pro, I have an upgrade coming anyway, and I want to start a YouTube channel, this is all you need to do that. I mean, you don't need a mirrorless camera or DSLR. That's how good these phones have gotten in overall performance quality. So in my opinion, that's what this is best for, is if you're looking for a smartphone that's best for content creation, look no further than the iPhone 13 Pro. I love this thing. There's no reason to upgrade for like 5 years, unless maybe you have a YouTube channel like me where you do tech reviews and that's the excuse to upgrade. But besides that, it should last for a ridiculously long period of time. I can't wait to do like a 5-year review update on this. But Anyhow, that's my take on the iPhone 13 Pro, as simply as I can put it. So hopefully this was good enough for you to make a decision. And stay safe, stay healthy. I'll see you on the next one.